Hello and welcome to Queer News Tonight. This is the world's first and only LGBTQ+ daily evening television news. Broadcasting live and then available on demand on all smart televisions, including Roku, Apple TV, Android TV, Amazon Fire TV, YouTube, Facebook, and of course Twitch. It's time to queer up the news. It is Wednesday, October 18th, 2023. We are live and literally out of the closet and into the headlines. So many of your important stories we are going to tell this evening on Queer News Tonight.
This is the world's first live daily LGBTQ evening news show, literally out of the closet and into the headlines on Queer News Tonight with Al Ferguson.
I'm Out South Florida senior reporter John Hayden. Al has the night off, and this evening we bring you the news of and perspective representing the LGBTQ+ community from South Florida, America, and across our planet.
This is the world's first and only unedited live LGBTQ+ evening news show. Whatever happens unique in LGBTQ+ news, you will see it and hear it.
Hotspots Magazine Happening Out Television Network is a non-profit 501c3 media company in the same model of PBS and NPR, but designed for the LGBTQ+ community. Our mission is to support the 10 pillars of our LGBTQ+ community. We want to inform and educate the key issues of our Black community, Latino, lesbians and queer women, trans, students and youth, seniors, HIV and AIDS healthcare, business, social justice, and faith. Help us support our community.
We are part of one of the largest LGBTQ+ media companies in America, Hotspots Magazine and Happening Out Television Network.
Our magazine is celebrating 38 years of LGBTQ+ experience, and our television news, talk, and entertainment show supports our mission to educate the LGBTQ+ and broader community.
Well, let's begin tonight by welcoming our panel, and we'll start with Mateo Ventura Bruer, the Executive Director of the Aqua Foundation for Women. Mateo is proudly trans and Latina, and is Aqua's first transgender executive director. Welcome, Mateo.
Thank you.
Finally, because it's been such a long list, let's welcome anchor Dr. Bobby Huen. He is a certified civil and family mediator and a founder of BH Conflict Resolution Services. He's originally from Hong Kong and grown up around the world. So Bobby brings us a global perspective of current events. Welcome, Bobby.
Thank you. I don't know who the other founder is. I think it's a ghost.
Well, there's a great show on Paramount for that. We are the reporters for Queer News Tonight, and this evening we begin with the queer headlines. The LGBTQ+ community in South Florida and across America is diverse. Our community across the world is vast. And here are the bullet points for the queer news for today, Wednesday, October 18th. And we begin by queering up Out South Florida. Black trans women making their voices heard. They are most at risk of death and violence just for being who they are. Black trans women have the most to lose. When society wants them to shut up, two are demanding to be heard. Tatiana Williams, founder of Trans Inclusive Group, has been named to Human Rights Campaign's Board of Directors. She served on HRC's Board of Governors since 2021 and was the Community Engagement Co-Chair for HRC's South Florida Steering Committee. She told me, quote, "I want to ensure my voice is not only present, but heard, addressing critical topics such as equity, representation, safety, and resource allocation for the transgender community," end quote. From large galas to small community events, Tatiana is a ubiquitous presence in South Florida. This news comes on the heels of Adriana Tender being named the new vice president of the Dolphin Dems, the first Black trans woman to hold the job. She, too, serves on HRC's Board of Governors. Their importance cannot be overstated. They will not be shouted down, but they will be heard. They are smart, competent leaders who bring perspectives missing from civil rights conversations. Their visibility sends a message that we value everyone, that we listen to everyone, that othering and marginalization will not be tolerated. At a time when even some in the LGBTQ+ community urge us to abandon the T, Tender and Williams' presence and importance has never been more needed. You can read more about both in Out South Florida, online, and on stands now. And one of the great things that I love about my job as a journalist is that I get to meet amazing people doing amazing things in the face of adversity. I've gotten to know both of these women through the events that I mentioned, Gospel Brunch, Floatorama, wherever something big is happening, they are there to represent, make sure, and sometimes it's just being seen. Sometimes a fundraising dinner is just a fundraising dinner, but it's important to be there and to make the connections. And I respect these two people immensely, and our community, South Florida LGBTQ+, and the national community are very lucky to have them in our corner.
I agree, and I think when you mentioned that someone is trying to remove the T from LGBT, a lot of it, I see it on social media and such, and they are all just straw men. They're often people, basically straw accounts created by right-wing people to encourage this kind of behavior from us, and we should not be falling for it. We are more powerful united than we are apart.
Absolutely.
And they are trying to split us apart by trying to convince gay men and lesbians, hey, you already got your civil rights. You don't need to work that hard. But that's BS. That's BS, because they just want to split us apart and then just take us down one by one. You think that trans rights is just going to be the be-all and end-all? No. They're going to overturn Lawrence versus Texas. They're going to overturn Obergefell versus Hodges. They want to strip our rights one by one, and trans rights is just the threshold, the
wedge. Yeah. And what I've had the opportunity to hear Tatiana and Adriana speak at different, various events, and what I love, or what I think is so important, is they're bringing together that intersection. It's not just that they're black women. It's not just that they're women. It's not just that they're trans. It is the unique experience of being all three at once and moving through a society that penalizes them for each of those things separately and then together even more. So we have to, continue to uplift their voices and think critically about the things they bring forward that, we will not and cannot ever experience, because we can only be experts in our own lives. So.
Right. And again, just because if you don't understand it, that's okay. Just listen. Just say, okay, maybe not for me, but don't actively try to stop people. And Bobby, getting back to your point, first off, we shouldn't talk about, getting rid of the T just because, one, it's the morally wrong thing to do. We have to stand together because that's the right thing to do. But let me appeal to perhaps some people's more base self-protective instincts. If you think that the T, that the people coming for us are going to stop at the T and leave the LG and maybe the B if we're particularly good, they'll leave us alone. No, they're coming for us, and they took 50 years to overturn Roe. They want to take a lot longer to overturn our marriage rights, our employment rights, and many, many other rights. So they're going to come for us. So if you're a short-sighted Nimrod, support the T because it does ultimately support yourself. Just get right.
Next, let's queer up trans rights. 19 attorneys general join case in Florida to block gender-affirming care for adults. Republican attorneys general and legal representatives from 19 states have submitted an amicus brief in a Florida case, Decker v. Ouida, which currently mandates that transgender individuals in Florida continue to be offered coverage under Medicaid for their gender-affirming care. In 2022, the Florida Agency for Healthcare Administration introduced a standard of care declaring that transgender care, irrespective of age, is experimental and thus shouldn't be covered by the state's Medicaid program. These guidelines, based on manipulated research by the agency and its contractors, have emerged as a pivotal element in legislative and judicial debates across the United States concerning transgender care. As Republican-led states with supermajorities explore avenues to challenge gender-affirming care, a new target is emerging: health insurance coverage for transgender adults and their essential medical needs. The letter, principally authored by Attorneys General Marshall, Griffin, and Skrmetti from Alabama, Arkansas, and Tennessee, respectively, aims to reverse the Decker decision. The Attorneys General have referenced the Dobbs decision, which overturned abortion rights, 8 separate times. They voice concerns that if the district court upholds Medicaid coverage by imposing heightened scrutiny on laws affecting transgender individuals, it might similarly apply heightened scrutiny to abortion rights. So that one was a doozy, but as I've been saying the whole time, when what it comes down to, abortion rights, transgender care, it's about bodily autonomy and the right to self-determination. Do you want to have a pregnancy right now? Do you want to have a child? Yes or no? That's your choice. Do you wish to have surgery that affirms your gender and whatever might go into that with other medical care? Yes or no? It's nobody else's decision or business, right? It's your bodily autonomy, and I think that's what it comes down to is legislators who don't want you to have that ability.
Once again, this fully demonstrates that this is not about protecting the youths or whatever they want to call it. You know, they want to block, you know, minors accessing gender-affirming care, saying that, you know, the minor doesn't have, you know, that doesn't. Right. Yeah, blah, 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 all the spiel. You know, appealing to suburban moms who are scared of everything. And then, but these letters literally spell it out. This is not about just transgender affirming care for minors. This is also about adults. They want to strip adults' rights to affirm their own gender just because they don't like transgender people. And secondly, the 8 times they refer to Dobbs, it's not an accident. This brief is going up the ladder. They want SCOTUS to see it, where Alito and Clarence Thomas and, you know, the right-wing judges can see it and say, yes, our decision will be in peril if we affirm trans rights, so we must strike it down.
And
yeah, go ahead, Mateo.
Oh, I just think that by targeting healthcare, and this is why we need universal healthcare. This is why it doesn't need to be tied to your job, doesn't need to be tied to your income. Everyone should have access to it, and then these kind of arguments won't hold any water.
Well, and that's the thing. Why do Republicans want Americans to be unhealthy? Go back to the 1990s, and they fought Hillary tooth and nail for that healthcare fight. Then we finally got something passed, and they spent years in courts and in the legislatures trying to ban it. Florida fortunately had a somewhat responsible governor in Charlie Crist when it came time for Florida to accept it, and we did. That's what it is. It's all about the healthcare. Why they want to just come in and just actively make your life better.
Because it's a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Here's why I don't think it's going to actually work. The court has, in recent history, within the last 3 years, has, yes, struck down Roe, but they also affirmed trans people as part under Title IX or Title VII. Kavanaugh wrote a decision a couple of years ago.
Title VII.
So right now, Title VII, right. So there doesn't appear to be a mood on the court to go super far in reeling back something that they literally just put out there. And I don't think even with the addition of Justice Barrett that it's going to move.
I'll correct you for a second. It was Gorsuch. It wasn't Kavanaugh.
I'm sorry, Gorsuch. Okay.
Gorsuch actually wrote that, you know, Gorsuch is a textualist. So in other words, literally on the basis of sex. And therefore, because gender identity and sexual orientation are both intrinsically tied to the word sex, that discrimination cannot happen based on sex. That's how he reached that conclusion. I don't care how he reached the conclusion, as long as he reached the right one. Right.
Of course, we have to keep following this, and I mean, maybe he's a vampire, but Thomas can't live forever. Come on, people.
Oh, I know. Well, anyway, next, let's queer up LGBTQ plus civil rights. The United States get criticized for reasons rights at UN Rights Review. The United States defended itself Tuesday before a UN rights scrutiny body, insisting President Joe Biden would continue pushing Congress to pass laws restoring former abortion rights. Washington also stressed its commitment to LGBTQ plus rights, indigenous rights, and racial equity. The United Nations Human Rights Committee, a body of 18 independent experts, monitors the implementation of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights by its state parties and conducts regular country reviews. Tuesday saw the United States in the hot seat in Geneva as the committee raked over Washington's record and asked what improvements have been made since the fourth U.S. periodic review. In 2022, the conservative-dominated U.S. Supreme Court overturned the landmark 1973 Roe v. Wade decision that had enshrined a woman's right to a pregnancy termination. Justin Vale, Biden's Special Assistant for Democracy and Civic Participation on the Domestic Policy Council, gave opening remarks for the U.S. delegation ICCPR presentation to the committee, stressing the administration's commitment to protecting and advancing sexual and reproductive health and rights. He also ensured that the Biden administration stands with the majority of Americans who believe the right to choose is fundamental and will motivate Congress to pass a law restoring the protections of Roe v. Wade. Well, good luck to that in the chaos of the House. They can't even find a speaker yet today. Still no speaker. There's no business conducting in the House because there's no one there to lead the ship right now.
Well, this leadership is, of course, coming from the White House.
Yeah, but if we're going to restore the rights to bodily autonomy via legislation, we're going to have to pass the House and Senate, and good luck with that, because we are mired in dysfunction right now, and we're not. And for the last time, dear media, there's no dams in disarray right now. It's GOP that's in disarray. Okay?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's way too often that we get the whole the liberals can do anything. It's not us. It's not us.
Yeah, we're sitting here ready to move.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting that I'm glad that the Biden's administration is standing firm in front of the UN's committee. I do think it's telling that we've never signed the actual, UN rights, Declaration of Rights, but
States.
baby steps. Maybe we'll get there.
At least the Biden administration went. Can you imagine a President Trump sending a representative to this panel, Ron DeSantis? Oh, hell's no. No, they want to. Everything that we're criticized for, they're on the sidelines cheering. Yes, we're against this. We're against that. They are the party of no. They are the party of hate. They are the party of wedges. They are the party of discrimination. Mm-hmm. So they're going to look at this and go, oh, yeah, let's be a little more Venezuelan and less Canada. I can't think of a democracy that starts with V. But that's where they're at. And so at least the Biden administration went. And it's good for us to be held up to the same standards that we would like to see followed in other parts of the world, in all parts of the world.
Yep. Next, let's queer up education. Queer Arizona State professor assaulted by right-wing hecklers.
Hey there, David. How you doing?
Oh, hey. How you doing?
Good. Hey, I just was wondering if I could ask you a couple questions.
Nope.
Why not?
Put that away.
Why? So let me ask you, when did you decide to get obsessed with sex education? Are you going to answer any of my questions?
Nope.
Okay, so if I ask you how long you've been attracted to minors, or how long you've fantasized about minors having sex with adults and why you write about it in children's books, what are you going to tell me? Nothing? What are you going to do? David, you can't run. It's best if you just talk to me about why you want to push sodomy onto young people. That's the best thing to do, is just have a conversation. Right? You said that, right? Like, I'm obsessed with sex education. You said that? Yes or no? No? Huh? Why do you feel like children need to be exposed to drag? Why is that something that children should be exposed to? And why do you feel that drag queens benefit from children being present at drag shows where they shake their genitals and their fake breasts? Also, I was taking a look at your Substack, and it seems like you really, really hate Americans. Like, you just are disgusted with Americans in this country. And it's funny because you would like to see a different America exist where little boys are sodomized by people like you, right? Hey!
In a recent disturbing incident on the Arizona State University campus, a queer instructor, David Boyles, was approached and harassed by two associates from the right-wing organization Turning Point USA. The confrontation, partly captured on video, escalated into physical violence, leaving Boyles with facial injuries. Boyles teaches English at the school and is a co-founder of Drag Story Hour Arizona. Drag Story Hour is a national nonprofit with chapters across the country. The groups organize drag events where performers read to kids at libraries, bookstores, and other places. The video commences with one of the Turning Point USA associates approaching Boyles, seeking to engage him in conversation. As the encounter unfolds, the Turning Point USA activist continues with accusations and derogatory remarks, questioning Boyles' stance on exposing children to drag culture and accusing him of harboring hatred towards Americans. Turning Point USA has previously targeted Boyles on its Professor Watch list for his advocacy of inclusive programs like Drag Queen Story Hour. The university administration and ASU campus police are investigating the incident as a potential aggravated assault case with a bias towards LGBTQ+ individuals. ASU has also released a letter reiterating its commitment to ensuring a safe and respectful environment for its community, condemning harassment or threatening behavior. So I actually got my master's from ASU, and I'm very proud of that. My program was in human rights and social justice. So I think it's pretty safe to say where Arizona State University stands as far as this topic. But yeah, that video was really hard to watch. Just feeling how afraid he must have been, and he doesn't know what they're going to do to him. And
TPUSA is notorious for this kind of stunt. It's like the equivalent of walking up to someone and say, "When did you stop hitting your wife?" You know, to imply that somehow, or when did you stop being a communist, or when did you stop being a pedophile? They want you to have a reaction so that they can chop
you look guilty.
They can chop it like, you know, Project Veritas style, chop it into selective edits so that they can frame you as something, upload on social media, unleash lips of TikToks on you, unleash their followers on you, so you can get harassed, doxxed, death threats to follow, or their objective is to shut you up. Worse, or actually the objective is chase you away from you. TPUSA, actually I refuse to use that, I call it Toilet Paper USA, basically has a list of professors to target. They have a literal list of professors they want to target, saying that these people are evil or too liberal and want to get them out of campus. It's like an official, it's like an organization that actually I'm pretty sure they probably collude with Ron DeSantis to get rid of certain professors who don't.
Well, they sound like a hate group, I think, but
it's literally a hate group.
Pretty clear.
Yeah.
Well, and their tactics, sadly, are nothing new.
No.
You know, spout hate, make questions unanswerable, ambush people. And there are certain times when an ambush interview is needed. If there's a politician, if there is a leader of an organization that you have reached out to and tried to get in contact with, there is a certain use for this type of journalism. This is not the case. This is about making lists of educators, lists of politicians, lists of people who have ever said anything that you don't like. Remember the well, of course none of us here remember it, but we learned about it in history. The intellectual purges in Germany, which were bad. Stalin said, "Hold my drink," and did intellectual purges through the 1930s and through the 1940s until he finally died in the early 1950s. We saw it in Republican politics today. They are handing out lists of from the speaker's office or the vacant speaker's office, Jim Jordan's office. His people are calling and saying, if you're a bad person, if your husband, they're calling politicians wives, if your husband doesn't vote for Jim Jordan, your husband will never be elected again. And there are more threatening, ominous tones and ways that you can read it. That's what this is. It's intellectual purge. If you say something they disagree with, which you probably will because you're watching and thinking, I know smart things, and they're going, no, we smart. No, they're ignorant nimrods, and I'm getting a lot of use out of that word today.
Yeah.
Next, we are proud of our special partnership with Sunshine Cathedral, the world's largest queer church here in Fort Lauderdale. Supporting that partnership, we are broadcasting from our permanent set here at Sunshine Cathedral at the Happening Out television studios. We broadcast Sunshine Cathedral's Sunday International Service at 10:30 a.m.
We finish tonight's Queer News headlines with a segment we call LGBTQ+ 1 Minute News. LGBTQ+ 1 Minute News, let's queer up trans rights. California prisons ignore state laws and continue mistreating transgender. In the fall of 2020, California Governor Gavin Newsom signed the Transgender Respect, Agency, and Dignity Act. It requires California prison staff to use the chosen pronouns of incarcerated people who are intersex or identify as non-binary or trans. It allows those people to select a gender preference and mandates prison officials honor requests to be housed at the type of facility that aligns with the prisoner's gender. However, bias and marginalization still lead to high rates of criminalization. It's not uncommon for trans women to harm themselves just to get to the safety of a prison mental health bed. The Transgender Respect, Agency, and Dignity Act was meant to put an end to these nightmares, but a year-long investigation by reporters from California's KQED magazine indicates otherwise.
LGBTQ+ 1 Minute News. Let's queer up gay culture. Dylan Mulvaney discussed the joy of being authentic at award ceremony. At the Los Angeles LGBT Center's Models of Pride Summit, transgender internet influencer Dylan Mulvaney opened up about being called cringe for leaning into trans joy and being her most authentic self. Mulvaney was there to accept the center's Models of Pride Award. It is an award given each year to a positive role model uplifting the LGBTQ+ youth. In a conversation with Philip Picardi, the center's chief marketing and communications officer, Mulvaney said that her joyful persona online is not put on, it's real, and it's purposeful. Mulvaney's approach towards her identity shows that despite transphobia and the struggle, the trans experience is also a joyful one.
LGBTQ+ 1 Minute News. Let's queer up the USA view. Wisconsin GOP attempts to ban trans students in sports and gender-affirming care. GOP legislators across the country want to limit the rights of trans youth, and now Wisconsin wants to follow the same path. The Republican-controlled Wisconsin Assembly has signed off on legislation limiting transgender youth participation on sports teams and outlawing gender-affirming surgery for minors, despite Democratic Governor Tony Evers' vow to veto it. The legislation goes next to the Republican-controlled state Senate, and if passed, it would go to Evers, who has promised the bills will never become law. This legislation includes 3 bills. One would limit high school athletes to playing on teams that match the gender they were assigned at birth. The second would apply the same restriction to college athletes. The third would bar doctors from performing gender-affirming surgery on minors.
LGBTQ+ 1 Minute News, let's queer up the worldview. Hong Kong court blocks government attempt to stifle same-sex housing rights. A Hong Kong court dismissed a government bid to deny same-sex married couples the right to rent and own public housing, calling it discriminatory and a complete denial of the couple's rights. The appeal involves 2 cases, one in which the authorities had declined to consider a permanent residence application to rent a public flat because his husband and their marriage is in Canada and was not recognized in Hong Kong. The other involves the same-sex couple denied joint ownership of a government-subsidized flat by housing authorities because their marriage in Britain is not recognized in Hong Kong. Activists in other parts of Asia are also watching Hong Kong's courts in their hopes that their rulings will influence campaigns for reform elsewhere.
LGBTQ+ 1 Minute News. Let's queer trans rights. A family court in Japan rules surgery is not required for gender change. In a win for Japan's LGBTQ+ community, a family court has ruled that it is unconstitutional to require a person to undergo surgery to officially change genders. The ruling means that transgender and gender non-conforming Japanese citizens who wish to update their gender in official documentation should be able to do so without having surgery on the reproductive organs, and has been hailed as a landmark win by LGBTQ+ advocacy groups. The issue brought to the family court by transgender man Gen Suzuki in 2021. Currently, Japanese law regarding people with gender dysphoria requires surgery to inhibit one's reproductive abilities as a condition to changing one's gender. Suzuki argued that this requirement is inhumane and unconstitutional. That is today's news for the LGBTQ plus community on the world's first and only daily LGBTQ plus evening news show.
If our community is important to you, share this news with your friends and family. Are you, like most of America, part of our very large television audience watching this live LGBTQ plus news broadcast right now on Roku, Apple TV, Android TV, and Amazon Fire TV?
Queer News Tonight is the only live LGBTQ plus digital television show in the world that is out of the closet and into the headlines. We need your support. If our community is to grow, we must tell our stories and bring them to the attention of the broader world.
This is the only place in the world that tells these types of LGBTQ plus stories in motion and sound. That is the passion of Hotspots Magazine, Happening Out Television Network, and Queer News Tonight.
I'm John Hayden, and on behalf of these LGBTQ plus reporters, the anchors of Queer News Tonight, and my friends, Mateo Ventura Bruer and Dr. B. Huen. We will see you daily at 8 p.m. And to our LGBTQ plus world, we wish you a very good night.
We are Queer News Tonight, the world's first and only live daily LGBTQ plus evening news show, brought to you from Happening Out Television Network. We operate in the same model of PBS and NPR, but for the LGBTQ plus community. We educate, inform, and entertain by supporting the 10 pillars of our LGBTQ plus community, with more than 100,000 a week watching us on Roku, Apple Television, and other channels. To keep the story going, we accept donations with 100% transparency. Stay updated and live authentically with Queer News Tonight.